Anyway, so Dennis, I don't know if you're gonna agree with me, but from your perspective as someone who has been writing and talking on this topic on creation evolution for so many years, uh, would you confirm my impression that this debate has cooled down over the years? That it has been in the past a more heated debate, and today the debate among evangelicals and secular people has been a little more directed towards social issues, justice, ideology, politics. Would you say, would you, from your perspective, really personal perspective, would you say that it has cooled down? And do you think, if so, do you think it will ever come back to what it was maybe in the 80s or 90s, early 2000s?
Hmm. Right. So I think in the United States, where of course the debate has been hot, in the United States for many decades, especially from 1961 onwards, especially when Earth creationism became quite popular in many churches in the States. I think the debate there is still quite vigorous, especially in the south of the United States. It depends where you are, of course, and what churches. Um, but I think that Bar Logos has had a very good influence there. I think you're familiar with Bar Logos and what they're doing, and Francis Collins and people like that. I have the impression that that has helped a lot of Christians to think more clearly about, at least you can believe in evolution and still be a good Christian. Okay. So, and one of the great things about Francis Collins is he's been so public about his Christian faith. He's, as you know, he's been director of the Human Genome Project, and then he was director of the National Institutes of Health for many years. Until very recently, he has been the science advisor to the president of the USA with an office in the White House. I think it might still be there, actually. He's handing over to the new person. And so, the fact that he's such a well known scientist, he's such a very well respected scientist, and also he's very public about his Christian faith. And obviously, he believes in evolution. And so I think that's had a strong influence in people, both in the secular scientific community, more secular scientific community, and I think in a lot of churches. And so I think the work of Bar Logos has done a great work. And it's still in the USA, it's still a bit of a hot topic, but I think not, as you said, I think not as hot as it used to be. And it depends on the country again. That's why it's difficult to generalize. In in my country, it was never really a hot topic. So, it's never been a hot topic. I mean, we had a sociologist working for us a few years ago in the Faraday Institute called Amy Unsworth. And her project was to try and discover whether the rise of the new atheism, the use of evolution ideologically to support atheism, had caused a rise in creationism in various religious communities in this country. And really, the answer was no. Um, but what she discovered in the process was that, I mean, if you take the whole United Kingdom population, the actual percentage of people who self-identify as real creationists, proper young Earth creationists, it's about 2%. It's about 2% of the population. Possibly 3%, 2.5%, and that's based on a lot of different questions, a lot of different kind of sociological data. So it's very small here. So it's not really been a big controversy in the United Kingdom, except in a few churches. Now, if you go to some independent evangelical churches, if you go to some Pentecostal churches in the United Kingdom, then it is controversial. But again, nothing like the States. Okay, it's on a. If you look at the States, it's much higher. I mean, in my own church, I go to a Baptist church here in Cambridge. we have about 300 people in church on a Sunday morning. It's not big compared to Brazil, but it's full, and we have a lot of students coming along. And the pastor we've had for the past 12 years is a theistic evolutionist. That I can think of, though. I know one, two, three. I know three creationists in my church. Yeah, and we're all good friends. We do the British thing is we don't talk about it. So it's a British solution to any problem. Don't talk about it. Actually, we have sometimes, but you have one discussion, you agree to disagree, and then you kind of go, okay. So, but that's our church, and it's we're a Grace Baptist church, which is a pretty conservative denomination, actually. It's a Reformed Baptist. So I don't know what to say. I mean, you go to different countries, and if you go to African countries, I was in South Africa a few months ago. We had a Faraday course in South Africa, and there it's pretty controversial. That if you're an evangelical Christian in South Africa, it's kind of assumed you will not be in favor of evolution. Okay, that's kind of an assumption that is made. Now there are exceptions, but that's still the general assumption. But there it's got tied up again. It's got tied up with racism. It's got tied up with apartheid. It's got tied up with colonialism. Charles Darwin, was a colonial white Anglo-Saxon male, colonial. So sometimes things can get very wrapped up together in this sort of ideological, political package, and that is the case in South Africa, actually. One reason, though, I'll finish with this comment. One reason I think the topic is not so hot as it used to be is that the new atheism is fading away, at least in the United Kingdom. It's looked on more as a historical movement now. These are all, like me, old white-haired Anglo-Saxon males from the West who kind of got it going, and now they're dying off. Christopher Hitchens and people are dying off, and Richard Dawkins has gone quiet, and so on. So it's sort of a historical movement in some ways, and I think that's because that really heated up the controversy. 2009, was a big peak here with the double anniversary of Charles Darwin. And the new atheists were then really at the peak, 2006, 2009. God Delusion had come out, all this kind of thing. But now, no, you don't hear about them at all, in this country anyway. So you get this historical process going on. And I'll just finish by making a comment, by the way, that recently I published a book as co-editor with Alistair McGrath called Coming to Faith Through Dawkins.